Green, chairperson for today.
I'm Councillor MacDonald, a member of the Licensing Committee.
Okay, I was going to explain. So we will now go to appointment of a chair, as we don't have, we would go to the appointment of the chair after the general introduction. Apologies. So I am Olukemi Faloye. I'm the Senior Governance Officer for the Council. I'll be minuting today's proceedings. And I've also got over to the Licensing Officer, please.
My name is Roy Robinson. I'm the Licence Officer from Basildon Council.
Legal.
Good afternoon, I'm Miss Smith, Solicitor for Basildon Council.
We have two other colleagues here, but they're just observing, so they're not part of it. Okay, then now we will go to the appointment of the chair, and we have Councillor McDonald. I believe you're agreeing to nominate Councillor Hazel Green.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yes. Can we move to the votes on that, please? If you're both in favour, okay.
Congratulations, Councillor Green.
I hope that's only for today. That's not for
today. Yeah.
So that's been passed. So now, Councillor Green, you can start.
Right. Any apologies for absence?
We've had Councillor Stuart Allen.
Yeah.
Not able to make it due to his interest. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any declarations of interest at all?
No.
No. Now we have to agree the minutes of the meeting held March 2020 on the 11th. But as there's only me, I will confirm the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, Lindsay, please, to explain the procedure.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for agreeing to take part in the hearing remotely today via the Zoom platform. There are just a few ground rules to enable the hearing to go as smoothly as possible. If you can ensure that that the name that's showing is your full name, so that the Senior Governance Officer can clearly record who's in attendance. If you can also turn off any noise sources that you have, a radio, television or mobile phone, and try to separate yourself from any interruptions, and also ensure that any smart speakers are turned off, please, just so that they don't inadvertently turn on or record the meeting. You'll be invited to speak, and we'd be grateful if everyone else could mute their microphones while someone else is speaking to prevent any background noise. And if you're referencing page numbers, if you could do so clearly so that everybody's reading from the same page. And if using video, participants can raise their hand if they wish to be recognised to speak, and the chairman will invite you to speak. Once we've dealt with the summing up at the end of the hearing, all participants other than the committee members, the Senior Governance Officer and myself will be moved out of the meeting into the waiting area whilst the members deliberate on their decision, and then you'll be brought back in to be informed of the decision. So I'm going to move over shortly to the licensing officer who will present the report. Then the applicant will be able to make their opening statements and call any witnesses that they may wish to. If there are any objectors that wish to speak, they will then be invited to do so, and then both parties will have the opportunity to make a closing statement, and the chairman will be asked ask all parties to leave whilst they deliberate and reach a decision. Does anybody have any questions regarding the procedure that's going to be adopted today? No, lovely. Okay, Chairman, then I think you can pass over to Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for, under the Licensing Act 2003, to be considered for a premises licence for for the Finest Lebanese Limited, 18 High Street, Billericay. On the 21st of December 2020, the Licence Authority received the application from Dad Solicitors on behalf of Finest Lebanese Limited. The application, which is enclosure 2 in your pack, and the premises plan, which is enclosure 3, relates to 18 High Street, Billericay. The application has been accepted as being properly made, and the application has been advertised in accordance with the relevant regulations. The applications for the premises licence authorising the sale for consumption on and off the premises, recorded music and late night refreshment. The hours requested are listed in the report. There are standard hours are Monday to Sunday, 800 hours to 100 hours, and late night refreshment, 2,300 hours to 100 hours. There are some non-standard hours which are in the report, which I won't read you out. The premises licence, if granted, would contain the relevant mandatory conditions as required by the Licensing Act, and those conditions offered in the applicant's operating schedule and those agreed with the Essex Police and Environment Health Services Pollution Control Team. These are enclosure 4. There are several of them in there. There's 2 sheets. During the statutory 28-day consultation period, the Licensing Authority received representations from 2 residents. A copy of those representations are attached at enclosure 6. One of the residents, Mr. Unwin, has informed us that he won't be attending, but I've not heard from Mr. DeCosta. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I've got for you.
Would you like me to begin, Chairman, on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, please.
Well, good afternoon, members. I hope you're all well. Let me tell you a little bit about Finest Lebanese Limited company and what they intend to do with this restaurant in Billericay, so that you know what you're dealing with before we go through the requirements of the Licensing Act and the objectives and precisely how this will function and the particular concerns that have been raised. First, so that you know, Finest Lebanese Limited will be the name of the operating company. The restaurant itself will be called, as you will see, Layalina, because that is the brand name for this company. And it has, and you won't probably be aware of this, 2 other restaurants. So it's not a novice in this area at all. The first restaurant is a restaurant in Piccadilly, which opened in 2002. It has 30 covers. It doesn't have an alcohol license, but it has a 24-hour license in relation to the food that it provides. The license there is in the name of Mr. Saliba, who's proposed to be the designated premises supervisor in relation to this applicant. And of course, you'll see that he's present. Forgive me for a moment while I turn off my email so that doesn't disturb us again. The second restaurant is a restaurant in Knightsbridge, which opened in 2009. It has 150 covers. It's a much bigger restaurant than we're looking at here. But once again, in relation to that restaurant, which is a successful restaurant in obviously a competitive area of London, Mr. Saliba is the designated premises supervisor. So in other words, you're dealing with someone with a lot of experience in this particular area. In the most broadest of terms, the restaurant here will be similar to the Knightsbridge restaurant, although unlike that restaurant, it won't be having any dancing or music. You'll have read that there's no application in relation to the provision of dancing or certainly live music. The recorded music that is requested will be music that's played at an ambient level, consistent with normal restaurant practice, that would encourage people to talk. Of course, if the restaurant music is any louder than that, it inhibits the ability of people who are there to talk, which, as you'll realise, defeats the object for many people of going to a restaurant in the first place. Let me tell you a little bit about why Billericay, so that you can understand what this company is about and the purpose behind the decision here. It's a commercial decision to operate in Billericay, and Mr. Saliba's actually been trying to open a restaurant in Billericay for a number of years, waiting essentially for the right premises to become available to him, because he believes that the high street is a good fit for the establishment that he is looking to run. And it offers him the ability to diversify his business away from central London and some of the risks that operated in central London, particularly in the last year, posed to a business such as his. Furthermore, there is an old chef who is an expert Lebanese chef who already works and lives in Billericay, and he's persuaded him to take an active part in this restaurant. So that's the reason behind it. It's taken assignment of the lease at the end of 2020 and is currently in the process of undertaking the work required to convert and refurbish the restaurant. Those works are due to complete in April, and what you should have, in fact what you do have in the agenda pack, is artist's impression of the premises, and I hope you'll agree that what is to be achieved here will be a premises that portrays itself at a very high spec level. The layout of the restaurant can be seen at page 39 of the agenda bundle. You don't need to turn to it now, because I think it's sufficient to make these observations about the layout. Firstly, you are dealing with 40 covers, so that's why it's substantially smaller than the Knightsbridge restaurant. And you'll see that of those covers, most of them are in the ground floor area, with some of them upstairs. Perhaps the contentious issue here is the garden, and you'll see that you're looking at between 15 to 20 covers in the garden area, so much smaller, limited in number, and of course some obvious observations in relation to dining in the garden. No one will be doing it right now. It's plainly weather permitted, and as you will see as I develop my presentation, the way in which the garden will be used has been very central to the development of this particular application. The next thing to be aware of is that covers inside are at the middle and the front of the restaurant. They're not at the rear, they're not close to the opening to the garden. At the rear of the premises is the kitchen, the toilet, and the staff quarters. So there is that gap between the inside of the restaurant and any of the residents. The ones that which we're concerned with today, of course, are all towards the rear of the premises and live in that kind of area. So the part of the restaurant that will be used is removed, as far removed as possible from where they reside. The licensing objectives and their promotion is dealt with already in the operating schedule, but just to deal with it in very summary terms, obviously, as you expect with any application, the relevant staff will receive induction training and training on an updated basis. Records will be kept. CCTV will be in operation when trading. No food or alcohol is to be permitted. Initially, it was at midnight outside. So initially outside in that area, what was offered was midnight. And you will see that when it's come to the concerns of environmental health, that has been reduced downwards. So that's, of course, just the food or alcohol outside. Furthermore, there's going to be monitoring, active monitoring of the outside areas, because that's the live area in relation to potential nuisance. Notices at the exit in relation to patrons who leave, and the Challenge 25 system. Once the application was lodged, the police suggested that they had some additional concerns that could be dealt with by way of conditions. And they amounted to conditions in relation to bottles, glasses, and containers, who actually supplies the alcohol. So in other words, it's supplied by someone with a personal license or approved by them, that there was an incident log kept and a refusal log kept. The premises agreed all of those conditions with a minor modification in relation to the form in which the logs were kept. So the premises agreed to keep them. The police wanted them in electronic format, and the premises said they would agree to keep a log, but at present, because of the way in which the premises are developing, it can agree to do so in electronic form. Let's hope that that will be achieved in due course. Perhaps more pertinent to where we are in the concerns today, environmental health, which plainly is the division that specifies the noise nuisance for the local area, raised concern about the proximity of residential premises, which is of course what you're looking at today. And it's suggested some conditions, some additional conditions, to regulate the use of the premises outside, so the garden area at the rear. An agreement was reached. What was agreed was this. Firstly, that between Sunday and Thursday, that outdoor area will not be used after 10 o'clock. And on Fridays and Saturdays, and any Sunday preceding a bank holiday, it will not be used after 11 o'clock. That's the first important thing, because of course that is the area that is most likely to cause noise nuisance to the particular residents that have raised objections in this case. Furthermore, in terms of music, no music is going to be played outside there at all. So what you're looking at in terms of the use of the gardens is it's only going to be used not for people milling around, because this of course is a restaurant. So it'll be used for people sitting and consuming food at a table, and the noise that you're dealing with is going to be conversation. Any noise greater than that has the ability to cause a nuisance to the neighbours, well, of course, the staff are going to be monitoring that, because that's a condition of the licence, will be a condition of the licence in any event. Once that agreement had been reached, Environmental Health no longer objected to the application. I move on now to tell you a little bit about Mr. Saliba, because of course you've heard already that he has held the premises licence for the Piccadilly branch since 2002, and that he's been a designated premises supervisor in relation to the Knightsbridge restaurant since 2009. In simple terms, he is experienced in the licensing regime, and he can deal with any issues that may arise. He's used to dealing with local residents, and perhaps here's the key feature to this particular application. He understands that by opening a restaurant in Billericay, his core client base will be the local residents. And so it is essential to developing that core client base that he develops a relationship with them where he understands, listens to their concerns, and deals with them in a way that they understand, means that their concerns have been understood and listened to. Let me give you an example of that. The first floor of the premises adjoins to the property of Mr. David Buxton. He hasn't objected. But there were concerns raised by Mr. Buxton as to the extent to which that adjoining wall could provide problems for noise. What Mr. Saliba did was he arranged for him to come into the property, arranged for him to view the work that was being done to the restaurant, and agree to a sound test with a view to putting in soundproofing upstairs if that was necessary. In reality, it's unlikely to be necessary because, as I've already stated, the level of noise here is ambient level music and conversation, so it's unlikely to be necessary. That isn't the point that's really being advanced here. It's that you're dealing with someone that has experience in this particular field and understands, particularly in somewhere like Billericay, the importance of taking on board the concerns of the neighbours, and has already gone about doing that in a proactive way. So let me deal, if I can, with the particular objections. Mr. Unwin is a resident of the flats behind 18 High Street, and he first raised his concern by email on the 29th of December. And really his concern is being affected by late night music until 1:30. Mr. Da Costa, who also lives behind the premises, raised his objection on the 23rd of December, and essentially it's similar concerns, requesting that the licence be given shorter hours. If I've understood the concerns correctly, what they are aimed at is that they do not want food or alcohol in the outside area after midnight, and they don't want music to be played. Now, the reality is those two issues have been dealt with because of the agreement that has come, or the agreement has been reached between the premises and Environmental Health. No music is going to be played outside at all, and the outside area is only going to be used until 10 o'clock on weekdays and 11 o'clock on weekends. The dad solicitors who act for the premises wrote to Mr. Unwin on the 21st of January and have also written a letter to Mr. Da Costa as well. And they, in that letter, told them that the premises had come to an agreement with all the responsible authorities and highlighted the agreement that had been reached with Environmental Health. And so presented that agreement really as allaying their concerns, but went further, explained that the type of operation that they're dealing with is more akin to Felix, the Felix restaurant that operates in the High Street that you may well know. But it also offered them a chance to meet Mr. Saliba, albeit virtually because of the current public health emergency, but to meet to him, to speak to him, to understand precisely how the operation will work, and to discuss their concerns and the way in which he will be available for them to meet their concerns on an ongoing basis. One of the things that he remains open to doing is for them to come inside the restaurant so that they can actually understand the likelihood of there being noise pollution from inside the premises when the premises is operating after 11 o'clock. We believe that the reality is that that is extremely low, but he remains open for them to come inside to see that themselves, particularly at this stage, because at this stage, when the restaurant is still being developed, the ability to take extra measures to deal with noise soundproofing can still be achieved at a relatively easy method. But of course, the later that's left, the harder it becomes. So the submissions that we make, in essence, here are the environmental health are really the experts in relation to noise nuisance, and particularly they're the experts in relation to noise nuisance in Billericay High Street, given the way that it lays out and given the other licensed premises that exist there. They've considered the issues and they are satisfied with these conditions. Indeed, these restricted conditions that the premises has agreed are the conditions that they required. The inside area, as I say, is further away from the premises. There wasn't, in an email that you may have seen from Mr. Unwin, a concern that there is an intention to construct a room outside in the rear. That is a misunderstanding. The premises has no intention of constructing any room outside at all. The outside area will be a garden used for those 15 to 20 covers sitting at a table, weather permitting. In relation to other issues of nuisance when patrons leave, the development where Mr. Unwin and Mr. DaCosta are located is a gated community at the rear. And so there will be no way in which the patrons who leave the premises will be able to cause any nuisance to them. They won't have access to it. Furthermore, bearing in mind the kind of patrons that a restaurant like this expects, and the fact that there are notices in the premises, and there are every reason to believe that these are the kind of people that will respect and abide by those notices, there's no reason to believe that any noise nuisance will be expected when they leave the premises. In summary, you're dealing with a well-established set of restaurants hoping to advance a new endeavour in Billericay, understanding the different dynamics involved in operating here compared to Knightsbridge and the need to operate in a way that is consistent with the demands of the local community. Its success in central London for 20 years in the case of one restaurant and 12 in another demonstrates its ability to operate in a way that not only makes it profitable, but in areas where the importance of the licensing regime and the promotion of the licensing objectives is well regulated and important. You're dealing with someone that understands that. And so you're dealing with, in my submission, an application that you can take seriously because this is a man of his word. So those are my comments by way of introduction. I don't propose to call any evidence, but either me or Mr. Saliba will answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you very much for putting that very eloquently and to make it so open for all of us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
The next procedure, Kemi.
McDonald's got is raising her hand. I think she's got questions.
Right. Okay, Elaine, for clarification. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for that presentation, Mr. Pons. And, and I think, I think we welcome this kind of endeavour in Billericay, and, it's a very sound application. And you've actually, during your presentation, alleviated some of my concerns. So I just would like to clarify, in section, I think it's 18 of the application, which covers the licensing objectives, on page 30 of the report, 18D says no food or alcohol shall be permitted in the outside areas after midnight. So I'm presuming that the conditions that have now been set to satisfy environmental health changes that.
That's
So-
correct. And I think that you should see that in the conditions at page. Yes, it's at page 45. You should see that.
Right, yeah. I just wanted to
Condition
double
10.
check.
Condition 10.
Yeah,
So, yeah, condition 10 at page 45 is what is proposed.
yes, that's lovely. Yeah, thank you. I missed that one, but yeah, because actually, looking at the maps, the plans, it does look, I mean, they're not very clear, those plans on on the screen, but
They never are they?
No, I know. Yeah, it's not criticism, but it does look as though those residential buildings are kind of overlooking that outside area. But I think now you've explained how that layout is, and I think I'm pretty convinced that Mr. Saliba, is experienced enough to be able to manage, the setup. Then I think that helps clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, anything else from anybody? I can't hear you, Kemi, sorry.
Legal, any questions?
No, there's
None
nothing
from
from
me.
me. Thank you.
Nothing for me, Chair.
Okay, and then Roy can, the licensing officer can make a closing statement followed by the applicant's representative.
Chair, I've got nothing really to add to the report or what Mr. Pons' information Mr. Pons has given us. So I think that's all that I need to say, really. Thank you.
Anything further that I would say would be repetition, so I won't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair, we could then reconvene the meeting. So I believe my colleague did explain that when we will put you in the waiting room and bring you back in once the meeting has been. So I'm going to have to. Oh, Lindsay, how does this work? Hello. I mean, this is different because it's remote. So this is.
I understand. And one of the things that we could do, if it will make it easier for you, is that me and Mr. Saliba could leave. And if I give you a mobile number, someone can either phone.
No,
you.
I will put you in the waiting room, but I'm just thinking about how we deliberate because we're recording it. So
Just stop recording it.
I'll have to stop it. Yes. So I'm
Just
going
stop the recording.
Yes.